Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the insights you need to be truly well-informed.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're plunging into a topic many of you are already tracking closely, the quest for the next generation of batteries, beyond our current lithium-ion champions.
Right.
And right now, all eyes seem firmly fixed on sodium-ion batteries, or SIBs.
That's right. And these aren't some, distant futuristic concept. Sodium-ion batteries are rechargeable powerhouses.
Okay.
They work in many ways on the same fundamental principles as lithium-ion batteries.
So, similar idea, just different ingredients.
Exactly. The core difference, as the name suggests, is swapping lithium ions for sodium ions as the charge carriers.
And that simple swap, it sounds simple, but it has massive implications, doesn't it? Beyond the headlines about lithium supply issues and environmental impact, what's the real game changer with sodium?
Well, the real revelation isn't just that sodium is everywhere. I mean, think ocean water, for instance.
Right.
It's that we can build these batteries with such a vastly different material palette, often more ethical and definitely more cost-effective.
Okay.
This fundamentally reshapes the whole supply chain picture. Many SIBs don't even need those expensive, sometimes scarce materials like cobalt, copper, or nickel.
Things we worry about with lithium-ion.
Precisely. They could use abundant iron-based materials instead, things that are just much easier to get hold of.
So we're talking a significant economic advantage, potentially, and a much lighter environmental footprint, too.
Correct, on both counts.
But it's not all smooth sailing yet, is it? What are some of the sort of inherent hurdles SIBs have faced?
Yeah, there are challenges. One key one comes from the sodium ion itself. It's considerably larger than a lithium ion.
How much bigger?
Almost 30% bigger in radius.
Yeah.
And that larger size can lead to slower ion movement, we'll call intercalation kinetics, within the battery materials.
Which affects?
Well, it can impact charging speed.
Yeah.
And they also typically have a lower energy density compared to lithium-ion batteries.
Right, less power packed into the same space.
Exactly. Which has been a limiting factor for certain applications, like maybe long-range EVs.
Okay, so our plan for this deep dive is clear. We'll first set the stage a bit more with the SIB background, current uses.
They're already making an impact.
Exactly. And then we'll jump into some really groundbreaking research that seems to be pushing the boundaries, uncovering surprising mechanisms that could, well, unlock new potential.
It's fascinating when you look at those fundamental advantages again. The sheer abundance of sodium, from sources like salt water, it just means an incredibly stable, lower-cost supply chain.
We need numbers on that cost difference.
Well, for context, back in 2019, SIBs were theoretically estimated to cost around, say, $40 to $77 per kilowatt hour.
Okay.
Compare that to the average lithium-ion battery cost in 2020, which was close to $137 per kilowatt hour.
Wow. Okay. That's potentially half the cost, or even less.
A significant economic driver, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes SIBs highly attractive for certain markets.
That cost advantage is certainly compelling. And when we talk about replacing critical materials, you mentioned cobalt, nickel. What are the other big wins beyond just cost? And what about safety?
Well, the ability to use abundant iron-based materials is a huge plus, not just for cost, but for ethical sourcing, supply chain resilience. You move away from those problematic metals.
Less reliance on specific, tricky geographic locations, too.
Absolutely. And on the safety front, it's a bit nuanced. Non-aqueous SIBs can still have thermal runaway risks, like lithium ion.
Right.
But aqueous versions using water-based electrolytes, they pose a much lower risk.
Okay.
That's really crucial for large-scale applications like grid storage, where safety is absolutely paramount.
Okay, so these aren't just theoretical advantages on paper anymore. SIBs are already powering real-world applications, especially where maybe cost and stability are prioritized over that absolute top-tier energy density.
Precisely. We're seeing rapid deployment, actually. There was a world-first 2-hour, 5-megawatt, 10-megawatt-hour grid battery installed in China just last year. Companies like Australia's Alltech are building a 120 milliwatt-hour plant in Germany. And we're even seeing residential batteries pop up, like in Estonia, for solar and wind integration.
So grid-scale storage seems like a really strong early market for them.
Definitely. It's a major area of success already.
And it's not just the grid, right? You mentioned vehicles.
Yeah, they're making inroads into light electric vehicles, too. You can actually buy light scooters today, like from Yadia, that use sodium-ion packs.
Really? Already on the market?
Yep. And maybe the biggest indicator of commercial intent. You have giants like CATL, the world's largest lithium-ion battery maker, announcing mass production.
That's a huge signal.
It is. They unveiled their Freevoy hybrid chemistry pack for EVs. It blends sodium ion and lithium ion.
Ah, interesting. A hybrid approach.
Yeah, and they're promising competitive range, over 400 kilometers, good fast charging 4C, even good performance in cold weather, which can be an issue for some batteries.
Okay. And others are jumping in.
Oh, yes. BYD is investing a massive $1.4 billion in a dedicated SIB plant. And CATL's specific Naxtra SIB brand, set for launch around April 2025, is targeting 175 watt-hours per kilogram and over 10,000 cycles. That's serious momentum.
That really is. Okay, the commercial momentum is undeniable. But let's circle back to the challenges for, say, mass adoption, particularly for things like those long-range EVs. Energy density is still the main one.
It is. It's important to acknowledge that gap. While SIBs are improving rapidly, they still typically sit lower. Prototypes are currently maybe 75 to 200 watt-hours per kilogram.
Compared to lithium ions.
Lithium ion is more like 120 up to 260 watt-kilograms, sometimes even higher in commercial cells.
Yeah.
So yeah, that energy density gap remains a key hurdle for packing enough range into a car without making the battery too big or heavy.
And you also mentioned the larger sodium ion potentially impacting charging speed and cycle life in some designs. So is the idea that SIBs are maybe destined for grid and light transport, but not the high-performance EV market, or is there a pathway to bridge that gap?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And while SIBs are incredibly promising, maybe even ideal for grid storage and light EVs right now,
Yeah.
to really unlock their full potential, maybe challenge lithium ion in more demanding applications, researchers are constantly innovating. They're looking into, well, unexpected chemical phenomena to overcome these very limitations.
Okay, and that brings us to the specific research you wanted to highlight.
Exactly. This is where things get really interesting at a fundamental level.
This sounds fascinating. We're talking about a paper titled Solvent Co-intercalation in Layered Cathode Active Materials for Sodium-Ion Batteries. The lead author is Yanan Sun, and it's published in the journal Nature Materials.
A top journal, yes. It points to significant findings.
Before we dive into their discoveries, can you just quickly remind us what intercalation actually means in a battery context?
Certainly. Think of it like ions in this case, sodium ions, checking into and out of tiny layered structures within the battery electrodes.
Like rooms in a hotel.
That's a great analogy, actually. During charging and discharging, the ions just sort of slip in and out of these layers in the electrode material.
Okay, hotel for ions. Got it. So what then is co-intercalation?
Co-intercalation takes that a step further. It's when not just the sodium ions, but also solvent molecules from the electrolyte.
The liquid the ions move through.
Exactly, that liquid. Those solvent molecules simultaneously pack themselves into the electrode material alongside the ions.
Huh. And traditionally, that sounds like a bad thing, like you're inviting extra unwanted guests into the hotel room along with the paying customer.
That's pretty much been the conventional wisdom, yes.
I seem to remember hearing that in lithium-ion batteries, there's this protective layer, the SEI, solid electrolyte interface.
Right, a very important component.
And its job is partly to prevent this solvent co-intercalation because it was thought to degrade the electrodes, cause problems.
You're absolutely right. The standard view has been that solvent co-intercalation is detrimental, something to be avoided. But here's where it gets really interesting. Recent research, including this work from Yanan Sun and colleagues, has shown that in some cases, particularly with sodium, this co-intercalation can actually be highly reversible, surprisingly fast.
Reversible, meaning it doesn't cause permanent damage.
Exactly. It can happen without wrecking the structure. And even more, it can potentially be used as a kind of lever to fine-tune the electrode's properties.
Wow.
In fact, there's evidence that in some graphite anodes, the diffusion of solvated sodium ions, that's the sodium ion carrying its little solvent entourage, can actually be faster than the diffusion of bare lithium ions.
That is truly counterintuitive, faster with the extra baggage.
It seems so. In specific situations, it likely relates to how the solvated complex interacts with the host structure.
Okay, so if co-intercalation was typically seen as a problem, what specific challenge was this Nature Materials paper by Yanan Sun and colleagues trying to tackle?
Well, most of the existing research on co-intercalation, positive or negative, had really focused on the anode, the negative electrode side of the battery. There was very little understanding of its properties, its feasibility, or even if it could happen in cathode active materials, the positive electrode.
So they were looking at the other side of the coin.
Precisely. This research aimed to fill that knowledge gap. They wanted to investigate if and how solvent co-intercalation occurs in a specific type of cathode, layered sulfides, and crucially, how it impacts their performance. Doesn't happen. Is it good, bad, or different?
Layered sulfides, okay. So what did the team actually do in the lab? What were these surprising discoveries?
Yan and Sun and their colleagues investigated a series of these layered sulfide cathode materials, specifically compounds with the general formula NaCsMs2, where M could be titanium, vanadium, chromium, or even mixtures of those metals.
Arranged materials and the solvents.
They tested them with different common battery solvents. There was a standard mixture of ethylene carbonate and dimethyl carbonate, they call it ECDMC, then propylene carbonate, or PT, and also dig lime, which they abbreviated as 2G.
Right, so different materials, different liquids. What was the aha moment, the really unexpected finding?
This is where it gets, well, quite remarkable. Normally, when sodium ions leave the cathode during charging, that process is called desodiation.
Right, the ions check out of the hotel.
Exactly. You'd expect the electrode material, the hotel itself, to maybe shrink a little as it becomes less full.
Makes sense.
But Yanan Sun and colleagues found something astounding. With the PC and 2G electrolytes, the electrodes substantially expanded during dissociation.
Expanded as the sodium was leaving.
Dramatically. Specifically, one material, P2-NaCsDs2, expanded by a huge 66% with PC and 28% with 2G.
Wait, that's completely backward. It got bigger as the sodium ions left. That's like guests leaving a hotel room and the room itself suddenly inflates. How on earth does that happen?
Exactly. It's totally counterintuitive. They term this an opposite flux mechanism. It means that as the sodium ions exit the structure, solvent molecules simultaneously rush in to fill the space. This seems to happen once the sodium content in the material drops below a certain threshold. So when it's mostly empty of sodium.
Like your crowded train analogy earlier, as passengers get off, more air, or in this case, solvent, rushes in.
Precisely. That seems to be the driving force the structure opens up as sodium leaves, creating space that the solvent molecules readily occupy.
And how did Jan and Sun and their team actually prove this was happening? It sounds quite tricky to observe.
They used some clever advanced techniques. Operando X-ray diffraction let them watch the structural changes in the electrode layers in real time while the battery was operating.
Seeing it happen live.
Exactly. They also used something called electrochemical dilatometry, or ECD, which very precisely measures tiny changes in the electrode's thickness during charge and discharge.
So they could measure the expansion directly.
Yes. And crucially, they also did direct mass measurements of the electrodes after cycling. They found a significant increase in mass, which definitively proved that solvent molecules were indeed being absorbed into the material, not just ions moving around.
So the type of solvent really mattered then. ECDMC didn't do this, but PC and TG did.
That's a key point. The ECDMC mixture showed conventional behavior. The electrode shrank slightly on dissociation, no solvent co-intercalation. But PC and 2G clearly enabled this expansion mechanism.
And any difference between PC and 2G?
Yes, interestingly, digliame, or 2G, seemed to offer the best balance. The P2-NaCsDs2 material cycled in 2G showed better long-term stability and rate capability, how fast you can charge and discharge, compared to the standard ECDMC.
Better performance with co-intercalation?
In this case, yes, compared to the baseline. It also showed more structural flexibility than PC, even though PC actually caused a larger expansion, about 30% larger than 2G. So there are subtle differences in how the solvents behave.
Fascinating. And once the solvent molecules get in there, what's actually inside the layers? Is it just the sodium ions floating around with their solvent buddies, these solvated ions?
That's another good question they investigated. They used solid-state NMR spectroscopy to get a chemical fingerprint of what was inside the layers.
What did that show?
It revealed that when co-intercalation happens, the layered structure isn't just holding the bare sodium ions or even just the solvated ions. It also contains free, unbound solvent molecules sort of hanging out within the layers too.
So it's a real mix in there. Ions with solvent attached and just loose solvent molecules too.
Exactly. It's a complex environment within those expanded layers.
That is a lot of surprising behavior, but what's really powerful in research, I think, is when you can start to predict these phenomena, not just observe them. Did the team manage to develop a way to figure out which materials might do this?
They did, and this is a really important part of the work by Yanan Sun and colleagues. They proposed a predictive model based on two key factors: interlayer binding energy and interlayer free volume.
Okay, break those down.
Basically, the idea is that materials where the layers are weakly bound together and materials that have naturally large empty spaces or voids between the layers are much more likely to allow solvent molecules to squeeze in.
Makes intuitive sense. Easier to push apart and more room to fill.
Precisely. And they found something crucial. when the sodium content is low. So in these sodium-deficient states after dissociation, the layered structures become much easier to expand, and they contain significantly more free volume.
How much more?
In one example, P2-MaNO.25-TiS2, that's the titanium sulfide, with only a quarter of the sodium left, showed a more than 700% increase in free volume compared to the fully sodiated version.
700%. Okay, that explains why the solvent rushes in when the sodium leaves.
It provides a strong rationale. This also helps explain why layered sulfides in general might be more prone to this than many layered oxides used in lithium-ion batteries. The sulfides are often more weakly bound and more open structures.
So they could predict which materials wouldn't show this effect too.
Yes, for instance, they looked at a material called O3-NaX-CRS2. It had the lowest calculated interlayer free volume among the ones they studied, and indeed it did not show co-intercalation with any of the tested solvents fitting their model.
That's fantastic. It moves from observation to understanding the underlying principles. So this isn't just a one-off trick for one specific material. What are the broader implications of these findings from the Nature Materials paper?
No, it seems more general for this class of materials. They found that other layered sulfides like P3NaX-VS2 and even mixed metal ones like P390.5V0.5S2 also showed co-intercalation with PC and 2G.
And do they see benefits there too?
Yes, a major finding was that one of these, P3NaX-VS2, actually demonstrated improved cycling stability when co-intercalation occurred, so a direct performance benefit linked to this mechanism.
Improved stability. That's a big deal for battery life.
It really is. And another key point, unlike in graphite anodes, where co-intercalation can sometimes drastically reduce the energy storage capacity because the solvent takes up too much space.
Right, less room for the actual ions.
For these layered sulfide cathodes, the penalty in specific capacity was found to be very small, so you get the potential benefits like maybe faster kinetics or better stability without a significant hit to how much energy you can store.
Making it a potentially viable strategy, not just a curiosity.
Exactly. This research really suggests that solvent co-intercalation is this complex but potentially really versatile new lever we can pull, a new tool for tailoring the properties of cathode materials for sodium-ion batteries. It opens up what the authors called a large chemical playground for future material design.
What an incredible deep dive. It's really clear that this work by Yanan Sun and colleagues, published in Nature Materials, is a genuine breakthrough. It demonstrates a surprising, maybe even counterintuitive, but potentially very beneficial new mechanism in sodium-ion battery cathodes.
Definitely shifts the perspective.
Yeah, this unexpected expansion due to solvent co-intercalation, especially in these sodium-deficient layered sulfides, it just offers a completely fresh angle on battery chemistry. Could lead to whole new avenues of design.
And that's exactly why these kinds of fundamental discoveries are so vital. They're crucial to realizing the full promise of sodium-ion batteries. This research pushes us closer to that future of cheaper, more sustainable, and safer energy storage solutions. Solutions that can not only complement lithium-ion, but maybe, just maybe, rival it in a wider range of applications down the line.
It's a fantastic reminder, this whole deep dive into solvent co-intercalation, that sometimes what we initially think is a problem, a limitation in science.
Something to engineer out.
Exactly. With new understanding, with clever design, it can become the very key to unlocking breakthroughs. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other processes we currently view as detrimental might actually hold hidden potential for our future energy solutions?
That is certainly something worth pondering. A great question to end on.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and join us next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of knowledge.